Hello and welcome to Additive Insight, the original additive manufacturing podcast and your source for news, interviews and comment on the latest 3D printing and AM intelligence, brought to you by TCT Magazine. I'm your host Sam Davis, and today I'm joined by Spectroplast CEO Maximilian Eils. Spectroplast is a silicone 3D printing service provider, with the company supporting customers with an offering that spans materials development, application development, and prototyping and production. Eils joined the company as CEO in late 2025 as Spectroplast moved its headquarters from Zurich to Munich. Throughout our discussion, he explains what prompted the move to Munich, in what areas silicone 3D printing is opening up application opportunities, and the materials properties the company is looking to deliver for its customer base. He also shares his vision for the company moving forward. If you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also head over to tctmagazine.com to subscribe to the TCT membership platform and receive more Additive Insight via our print and digital offerings. Max, welcome to the Additive Insight podcast. You joined Spectroplast as CEO last year. So to start today, could you quickly tell us about your background prior to that and also explain what attracted you to the opportunity with Spectroplast?
Sam, thanks a lot for having me. Happy to do so. I joined the additive manufacturing industry 15 years ago, roughly. Started at EOS right after studies, and the people might know this ball and ball I saw back then. I was fascinated already then. Obviously, the use case is not as industrial, but the idea of printing a ball and ball already 15 years ago, I found quite fascinating. And I had the pleasure to work with an amazing team at EOS over the last 14, 15 years and really see how the industry shaped from prototyping into serial production, and being part of that, shaping this in Europe, but also then a few years in the US. As a sales manager there, and then leading the European team here at EOS coming back was a fascinating time, and really allowed me to see the challenges to really bring additive manufacturing in industrial or serial production, and the opportunities also with it, and how to go about it. And then I came across Spectroplast. I was very intrigued by the technology, by the patent portfolio this company has. And I felt like it's the similar journey as we've seen in metal and polymer 3D printing, but more on the DLP technology, where there are already a few technologies and materials out there that are definitely in serial production, but silicon is still at the early stage, I would say. But seeing a true silicon material, which is also used in injection molding, and being able to then really build this whole arc from prototyping to bridge production to serial production, I found really interesting. And I said, okay, this is now an opportunity to be a bit more entrepreneurial and take this chance to, with a great team, build that same arc and bring this technology more into serial production, to give this into the hands of our customers.
And around the time that you joined the company, Spectroplast was relocating its headquarters to Munich from Zurich. So what can you tell us about the motivation behind that decision?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe a brief history on Spectroplast. So the whole idea was invented by two founders, PhD student from the ETH Zurich, and they basically also started Spectroplast as the founders back then, and developed the first materials, ideas around it, brought it to market. And over time, they weren't able to really scale. And I think it's also a lot to manage, so to say, when you are building a company. There's a lot of competition in the market, a lot of demand, things to manage. And the company stalled a bit the last years and wasn't really able to bridge and really go the next step into serial production. And this is where, so to say, in conversations also with the investors, we looked at the whole setup and said, hey, there is really a potential here, but maybe we have to modify the execution a bit and also come with a team which has a bit more experience in the 3D printing environment. And this is, we sometimes, opportunities fall in its place, so to say, and get together. is at that time there were also a bit of layoffs in the 3D printing space, 3D Systems in Munich, Nanodimension, others. So there were really good talents available in Munich through my own being in Munich located network here. This was a great opportunity to say, okay, now we can assemble a full new team. And really make sure that from start the whole system, the back end is set up with production in mind, with scaling in mind, and also having the experts from the different disciplines on board to support that journey. So I'm very fortunate to have been able to assemble a great team here in the last month.
Obviously, you've mentioned already that the aim is to kind of make serial manufacturing with silicon 3D printing a reality. Obviously, silicon 3D printing is a bit of a niche market within a niche market. What is your perspective on the maturity of the technology today? You know, serial production is the aim. Where are we today?
Yeah. So the great thing is, if we look at the silicon market, it's a huge market, just like injection molding is obviously owning the space there. And this is, as with other 3D printing technologies, injection molding will always be there, or conventional manufacturing. But it's really about finding the right applications that add the value by leveraging the advantages of 3D printing. In terms of the maturity of the material, we already have application with customers which are for clinical trials in patient use, where we really then say this is the final product in the market, or can get to a final product in the market. And this is something where the technology and the maturity is already at a very high level, especially with the DLP technologies and the different printers out there, which are getting more productive, where you have a really good service quality, which you can compare with injection molding, really allows, from a technical perspective, to really say that the potential to go into serial production is already there. Obviously, then it depends on what is the requirement of the application. Not every application has the same requirement, and it's about making the business case work, where you say, okay, now for bridge production, it might make sense due to the volume. But then if you really want to go into serial production, we are at a point where you need to leverage the design freedom, the advantages. And this is what we definitely see in the medical space as a perfect starting point to get into. Very high bar in terms of certification, that is clear. But again, as we already have some good applications with customers in that space, it's more a question of working together to go through that whole certification journey and bring this as a final product into the market.
Okay. So in terms of the service offering that Spectroplast provides, can you, I guess, describe the full range of services there?
Yeah. So Spectroplast in the past always had an on-demand business where you can just go online, upload your part and get it printed. This is really good because it is a low entry barrier. So for customers who say, hey, I want to try it, just go on our website, you upload your file, you get an instant quote. If we see, hey, there are some challenges, our engineers reach out and you get a part within 5 days printed. This really is for testing out, for prototyping and getting a feel of what can the technology do, a really great entry point. And this is why we're really making sure that we scale this, also that we offer this also through partners to make sure a lot of people get easy access to the technology. What we then want to do, and this is what we can do with all the customer contacts we have, to identify and have conversations where we say, okay, this is an application that has the potential to go into serial production. Or customers say, hey, we really use this for prototyping, we would like to go into higher volume and print 1,000 parts instead of 2 or 10. And this is something where we then engage with our application engineering team to really say, okay, do we need to do any modification on the material? Can we use the material we already have? What about the right printer? What is the right DLP printer to use? What modification do we need to do to the print process to really ensure that the application in the end or the part is what the customer requires, and that we optimize this whole workflow? And this is, so to say, the second part of our offering to help customers for selected application to go together through that journey. And the third one is then really the materials business. In the end, if a customer, I always believe the customer goes where it makes best sense for them. If it means in-house production, we are happy to transfer the knowledge to the customer to produce in-house. we're happy to work with their supplier to produce or to set up the production there, or continue to produce for the customer in-house here with Spectroplast. But in the end, our business model there is to sell the material. And this is why we're not, so to say, forcing or locking in the customer, but rather say, hey, you have freedom to say if you want to scale, how you do it. And again, selling that material also is what we're working on, and we will offer at the beginning of next year is a plan to enable customers to just have better, easier access on the platform they like. And this is, again, is a rather open approach we like to have. And these are the three kind of key elements of our business.
So in terms of application opportunities, I guess, you've mentioned that, in silicon manufacturing, injection molding is the is kind of owning that market. So when would you say is the right time to use silicon 3D printing technology, and when isn't the right time?
So especially in the beginning of your product development, when it's about prototyping, the advantage of 3D printing silicon are clearly there, where you don't need to invest into tooling. You do get really the possibility to iterate quickly, get parts ordered and delivered within a few days. You can really test a lot of different geometry, and especially in the beginning, in this prototyping development phase, this really helps you to shorten the time to market and iterate fast. And this is where the advantage of 3D printing silicon are clearly there, because with the real silicon you can then go into serial production. But what we are obviously pushing for is to reduce the cost and make sure that this break even is pushing further to the right, where you then can also go into bridge production, as we talked about, and then into even more serial production. But what is more exciting is if you really think about how can I leverage the advantage of 3D printing throughout the full product life cycle, because there are things you can do with 3D printing you can't do with injection molding. And one very interesting case I can talk about publicly is a company, Semiflex, which is a startup in the medical space, which really took advantage of this design freedom and the possibility to also mass customize to an extent. What they have is a device, it's a little plug, so to say, which treats fistulas, which are in the body channels, which are which happen where there should not be any channels in the body, to avoid that there's no contamination, no bacteria going into places where there should be no access, and this is very painful today to treat and to operate. And what they did is, with this little silicon plug they created, that they have internal channels inside this geometry, and you insert this plug into that fistula, into this channel, and then you pull a vacuum, so the good tissue around is getting sucked together and then starts to also heal, and then over time you are replacing these longer, so to say, plugs with smaller ones, and you step by step, so to say, let the body heal and really get rid of this channel. The great thing about the design freedom is that these internal channels cannot be injection molded, so you really are taking advantage of 3D printing, and the silicon material ensures that the tissue is not growing onto the device. And this is something which, again, the combination of the advantage of 3D printing and the performance of silicon is very well leveraged there. The applications are going through clinical trials, so they are currently in the body of the patient for up to 48 hours, and this is really showing what is possible if you are designing deliberately for 3D printing, and we're very excited to have them as a customer and scale with them over the next years.
So in terms of volumes, I understand runs of a few thousand parts are achievable right now. What is the barrier to going beyond those numbers? Is it a technical barrier or is it a business case barrier?
It's really a business case barrier. It depends obviously also on the end applications, and in silicon you have in injection molding a very broad range of silicons. So obviously if you need a specific characteristic with which the 3D printing silicon does not offer yet, then you have basically not the same bandwidth yet. So there are some technical limitations in the bandwidth of available materials, but this is something which we are continually growing. But then it is mainly a topic of the business case. And this is where, again, the development in the market is rather exciting. We're seeing that the printers DLP printers are getting lower in cost, that the build size are getting bigger, where this is being pushed further and further. So I can definitely see higher volumes coming up in the next 2 to 3 years easily. And also for us, as we are scaling, obviously material costs and all this play a role in higher volume even more significantly. So this is something which then also comes down over time and will enable more applications. And this is, I think, a natural progression we have seen in other 3D printing technologies in the last years.
Yeah. In terms of application development and the work that Spectroplast does there, can you walk us through a typical application development process with a customer?
Yeah, so we believe it all starts with the material, right? In the end, if you want to enable an application, you have certain requirements on the part properties, and the material is really the starting point, defining the core characteristic of the final product. And this is why we have invested so strongly in our material competencies to really be able to say, okay, can we use the off-the-shelf product we already have, which is always beneficial in terms of time and also the certifications we already have on the existing portfolio. But if needed, we will talk with the customer and say, okay, it might make sense to do a modification of the material, so to say, to get the characteristics. This could be coloring the material. This could be tweaking towards a certain special requirement in terms of the final part. And then we add the second step, which is design optimization for the printability, but also the process optimization for the specific printer. So we can discuss with the customer which print platform makes most sense, which is out in the market, to then say, okay, this is the ideal setup, and then really go into the first trials development, and in the end really be able to transfer the customer not only a part but a whole workflow that you can then start to go into certification and scaling up. This is really where we do front-loaded engineering, and depending on the volume and the big business case behind it, makes maybe sense to spend a bit more time in it. If you say, okay, it's lower volume or the business case is a bit more challenging, then we try to go more with our standard materials. So we have a rather broad opportunity here to adjust our offering to what the customers need.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the application development kind of partnership, I read on the website that Spectroplast has printed more than 120,000 parts and supported more than 700 customers. So with those numbers in mind, how frequently are you able to work so intimately with customers on application development? I assume you don't quite have the capacity to do that with all 700 customers that have used your services. So how often does that happen?
Yeah. It's a good point. What we obviously aim for is that we are supporting customers also if they have a small request, but it's a very simple support. We are also helping with the design guidelines and things you can easily scale through software or also through some tutorials. So this is where we're already helping a lot of our customers to leverage and make sure that leverage our technology, make sure that what they offer or upload on our website in the end gets printed and meeting the expectation. But what obviously is a difference is the customers really say, hey, we have here something, we see a potential, and we want to go further than prototyping, we want to go further than just a few orders a year. And this is something where it's a natural, let's say, selection by the customers or in partnership with the customers of saying, okay, we really want to also invest and have skin in the game from the customer side. So far we have been positioned well to handle all the requests and have some good success stories there, but more to come. Yeah.
When you've come through that application development process and you're entering production, what does the end-to-end workflow look like? What are the pre and post-processing steps that are required around obviously the printing step?
Yeah, no, you touch on a good point, especially in DLP, but also other 3D printing technologies. The post-processing is a very important part of the whole process chain. So if we walk through it, the standard is a CAD file that can then get sliced into the file for the printer format. And then after the print process, we will wash the part in a solvent, making sure that any reactive materials which might have not fully so to say reacted in the build process gets washed out, and then we have a curing step to just make sure the part is fully cured. And this again is something which depends also on your requirement. If you have a prototype, if you say, okay, I only use it for 6 months and then I'm not using it anymore, you can maybe take some shortcuts on the post-processing. If you say, okay, I want it in body use or I want to have skin contact, then obviously we are adapting the post-processing and the whole workflow bit to make sure in the end the product is meeting the requirement of the customer. And this is also part then of the whole workflow setup we are doing with our customers to make sure in the end this is meeting the final part specification.
Yeah. And then in terms of materials, what's the kind of range of materials that you are able to print with today?
Yeah, so we have we call our material portfolio TrueSil because it's really a true silicon in the end of the part properties you're getting. And there we have a range of different shore hardness from A20 to A60. The standard material we have is a translucent white material, which is very well let's say, or is very well known in the silicon industry, or also expected. The great thing is with that you can also color it if you want to. That's always possible if you obviously have that baseline. And also for the medical applications where you want to see debris, where you want to maybe see blot marks on it, and making sure that it's a sterilized, clean product, the white translucent material really becomes handy. And then again, the shore hardness is then depending on what you need in the end. And this is where I would say most of our products request is an A35. A50 is also very well used, and then for some other more specific application, A20, a really soft material, then becomes the choice.
Okay. And in terms of future materials development, what are the properties that you are looking to enable? What are the material properties that your user base is asking for and demanding?
Yeah. So what our orientation is obviously the injection molding silicon market, where, as I mentioned previously, there are a lot of different materials out there, different variations. So what we're looking for is to be able to build the capabilities in-house to really fine-tune the material to the characteristic the customer needs. And what is obviously core when you come from prototyping into serial production is also the longevity of the part, making sure, it's a UV process, so UV light is curing the part, making sure that the long-term durability of the part is proven. And this is obviously something where we're doing a lot of intensive tests to make sure we can say, okay, if you put this into a final product or final end use, this is the longevity of the part, what you can look for. So these are the two folds, really making sure that we have the stability of the part over time, and then tweaking the material really depending on the characteristics the customers want.
Mm-hmm. What are the kind of big application opportunities you see ahead for Spectroplast? Obviously, you'll know what you're doing behind the scenes in terms of R&D in materials. So if those materials make it to market, what are the big application opportunities that they open up?
Yeah, so we see obviously a lot of demand in seals and gaskets. Simple. It's, let's say, simple in terms of geometry, but the also performance requirements are high, and this is something where it's easy then to go from prototyping to bridge production and then scale to a certain point where then you have the break even with maybe an injection molded part you then produce. But this is really something where also for end of life, we see a lot of customers engaging with us to see, okay, how far can we push it? The other thing which I think is really exciting and has its own challenges is the medical market. And this is where we talk about customization. Our material is able to pass skin contact tests, so is non-cytotoxic. And this allows to have applications in skin contact. You can think about in ear, you can think about masks, which are customized for patients. So enabling the field of medical where you take advantage of mask customization and the advantage of silicon. This is where we see a lot of activity and exchange and interest of our customer base. It does come with the hurdles of regulations, but this is where, again, we have customers who have for clinical trials FDA approved silicon application printed on our machines that go into body for up to 48 hours. And this is showing it's possible, but we need to work with the customer through the regulatory process, because obviously we need to make sure, or want to make sure with the customer that this is meeting all the regulatory requirements before it becomes a product on the market.
Yeah, in terms of materials development, obviously it's a core part of the Spectroplast business, but to develop any material is a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of money. How much of a kind of pipeline do you need to see from industry, from customers, for you to start the materials development process? You obviously don't want to develop a material, do all of the work, and then there's no application at the end of it. So how do you balance those two things?
Very good point. The one thing we deliberately do is that we say we focus the whole team on silicon 3D printing, right? So we are really building the expertise and having the right colleagues on board who understand the silicon material space, which does behave different than acrylate-based or other 3D printing materials. So this is one, to really make sure we have that knowledge, and then that we are able to assess before we really go into a project with a customer, okay, what are the requirements and how much can we leverage the existing portfolio to do modifications? And based on our history, our test, our database, we're developing on an ongoing basis, we do have a good understanding to put a risk profile on it. But this is also something where we are transparent with the customer to say, if this is what you're aiming for, there is a chance that we might not be able to achieve it. But this is where we really have a standard project approach, where we have milestone and gates to really go about iterative and step-by-step approach to kind of get to the final result. And so far, I think we have been good to also be honest with our customers, because it doesn't add value for the customer and us to just run after an opportunity which is not feasible. But we're also able to then find a few workarounds to say, okay, hey, maybe this approach didn't work, but this is promising, where the customer says, okay, this is actually good for our application, and we can move ahead.
Finally, Max, and thank you for your time today. As you look forward, what is your vision for the company?
So for me, it's really, I want to make sure that more people get their hands on silicon parts, and that they are seeing that there's the potential to move it into serial production. As said over the podcast, the material is really the core driver. So the vision for us is really to be able to take the customer's requirements and be able to turn rather fast this into a full solution consisting of a material, consisting of the right printer and post-processing steps to scale this application. And this is really what the whole team here is working on day in and day out to enable these applications.